business tips to successfully start and run your business so your business doesn't run you. And more importantly, we provide personal development tools to create a better version of yourself to provide the solid foundation for your life and business to stand upon. This is the Biz Reveal, and I'm your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's episode is sponsored by Copper Coast Gourmet Coffee. When fresh matters, check out their full selection of flavored, blends, and single origin coffees at coppercoastgourmetcoffee.com. Strategic marketing consultant and sales strategist, Andrew Deutsch has successfully driven business growth in more than 100 countries. He has studied both international trade and psychology, building a unique methodology focused on converting customers into brand advocates as a strategic base for sustainable growth. After the show, learn more at www.virtualpresentercoach.com. This is the Biz Reveal podcast with this week's guest, Andrew Deutsch.
Yeah, my career began as a guy wanting to be in international sales. I wanted to be a global marketer. I was inspired as an exchange student living abroad as a kid in high school and really wanted to be part of that market. Went to school to study international trade. And at the same time, in my early 20s, I graduated when I wasn't 21 yet. I finished undergrad in 3 years because I knew I wanted to be working, not studying. Awesome. And got an offer to work for a nonprofit in Orlando, Florida. And the 20-year-old in me said, that could be fun. Right. So I moved and took a job completely out of the field I studied for, which was probably the smartest thing I ever did. So the beauty of it was, what does a nonprofit person do? You're out making sales every day without a product that people can take home in their hands. So it was, what do you get by donating to this organization or being a volunteer in this organization? I'm going to pay you with a handshake, and I'll give you a certificate, and you'll go home feeling like a better person.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we were selling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And selling that intangible really got my head working in a different direction. Mm-hmm. The problem was I really didn't feel very good about the people I was working with, which was another great lesson. That the longer I was involved, although my boss, who I still to this day, I was actually able to, after 20 something years of not having contact through the miracle of the internet, got to call the guy up and thank him for truly being the first real mentor I ever had in the business world outside of family and stuff. But
Sure.
But aside from him, we were working with some people that just weren't there for I sound like a reality show. They weren't there for the right reasons. Just the level of sort of grift that I saw among people bothered me, and I decided I was going to go back to school. So I'm going to study to get an MBA. No, every MBA I knew was unemployed. The economy was garbage at that time.
Yeah.
So I went back and studied psychology and really focused my efforts on how I could use that to create a resume that was different than all the other business guys, and look at that multiculturalism as to how you grow businesses in the world market. And it paid off. That was when I started actually getting business dealings going while I was actually working as a therapist in Central America. That grew into a reputation for creative marketing ideas that took me down to Brazil for a 90-day project where I ended up living for 10 years.
Now, is that just because the environment was so different that you had to think about different things than you thought about when you were here?
It was, but the Brazil thing was interesting. They had been under a dictatorship for years and years.
Okay.
Finally broke the dictatorship. President came in. He was kind of a crook, got impeached. But in the process of him leaving office and the replacement, a plan went into place to open the market for imports for the first time in, I don't know how many years it was. So in the US, I was a guy who knew how to do stuff like everybody else. There, I was an expert.
Sure.
And I say that sarcastically because really I wasn't an expert, but I learned many years ago when somebody asks you, do you know how to do that? Don't fake it till you make it. You say, I don't, but I'm really good at what I do and I know I can figure it out. Let's make this happen.
Sure.
And then go to work and make it happen. So we were involved as I built my business down there, mostly in the industrial space, helping Brazilian manufacturers find components, tools, equipment, modernization, automation, and materials from U.S. and other regions to really grow their businesses. So in a great example, during the dictatorship, if you looked at a Volkswagen in Brazil, the basic car, the Gol, in 1993, it looked like a car we would have sold here in the States maybe in the late 70s.
Oh, okay.
The market opened for import, and now the Gol was a modern car. Why? Because it had to compete against innovation rather than market barriers.
Right.
So it was so prime for us to find innovations that could be competitive in the market and help Brazilian businessmen understand that global market.
So what were those innovations? Was it in method or was it in product?
Method, product, quality structures, general management skills within companies. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients was in the industrial packaging, end of line packaging, as they call it. Equipment to put strap-on boxes, equipment that would seal boxes, put adhesive tape on them, things like that.
Okay.
Prior to the opening of the market, there were a couple of multinationals that owned that market. There was 3M and a company called Cyclop. And they had dominated the market in a way because nobody else could compete. So the pricing, everything involved in it, if you wanted to automate, was excessive. And the way that they both went to market was they would give you an automated piece of equipment that would fold the flaps and seal the box if you bought their tape. Okay?
Okay.
So a roll of tape, let's say, I'm going to pick number because it's been a long time, but understand this is just to understand ratio. So imagine they were charging $50 for a roll of tape that had 1,000 meters on it. The typical box tape you buy in the store is maybe 50 meters.
Okay.
So to give you an idea of the size. So that roll of tape was that much, but you got to use their machine for free. Well, we looked at what would happen if we brought in master rolls of that tape, slid it down into individual rolls in Brazil to sell it. And you could make a hefty profit at $30 a roll, not $50 a roll. So we created a marketing strategy for this company, not just to bring in, buy the equipment, slit and process that material, but also to go to buyers. And this is before, everyone was powerful with Excel and otherwise. But we created a formula. How many rolls of tape, how many meters total did you buy last year? How much did you pay for those meters? And compare that to, had you been buying tape from us at this price, how much was that going to be? So the buyer would look at it and go, oh my, by the way, the final line in Portuguese basically said how much I was overcharged by my current supplier. That was how we worded it. We had customers that were $300,000, $400,000 over a 5-year period that they overspent because they were getting free access to a $3,000 machine. So our thing was, we're going to sell you a machine at cost, and hopefully you'll be buying our tape at this price, but we're basically taking the handcuffs off. So what we were selling to that customer was freedom to buy from whoever you want, but give you such great service and such a great product, and the guys who solved your problem that you'd want to continue to do business with.
Sure. Yeah, you don't want to leave who's already taking care of you the way that you need to be.
Yep. And it was the first time in my professional career, and I know this is going to sound like an exaggeration, first time I ever got a death threat.
Oh, okay. Do tell.
There were, this company that I was working with placed over 1,000 machines in less than 2 years, which meant that all of those machines that were on loan for using tape got sent back to the company.
Right.
So they had warehouses full of used equipment that they couldn't do anything with, and customers who hated their guts because they've been overcharging for all those years. And a guy called me and said, if you keep this up, I'm going to kill you. Of course, I didn't believe it, but that was the direct translation of what he told me.
Wow.
Which is, by the way, in Latin America at that time, that's a sign of success. As soon as they want to kill you, you're doing a good job.
Well, I think in any business, once you start getting death threats, you're like, yeah, I'm doing something right. So I'm going to put a little spin on this. Sure. And feel free to not answer or answer. But it just popped in my head. If you were that company, right, like switch sides, and somebody else had, affected your business the way that you had affected theirs, and then now you've got all that surplus of equipment that you can't do anything with, what do you do? What's the next move, do you think, for them?
Well, I'm going to take it back a step further before I answer, because number one, I would never create that problem for myself in the first place.
There you go. Okay.
That's number one. But if I was in that position, and imagine now this is what was going on, because I actually got to sit in on a meeting where the guy didn't realize who I was, because I was curious what was going to happen when he showed him our paperwork.
Yeah.
And it basically said on the paper, the buyer shows him, and it says, according to this, you've overcharged us $400,000. And the salesman from the incumbent said, well, you've had the machine long enough. We can let you have it and we'll match their price. And the guy said, yeah, but first you've got to rectify was it $350,000, $400,000 you owe us? That salesman didn't stand a chance.
Oh, no.
There was no way to recover from that, because when you create your business based on imprisoning your customer, there's no positive way to go forward. It goes back to the definition of capitalism. We look at capitalism in the US and we have a different definition of what it actually is. In a capitalist society, there would be no lobbyists. There would be no using your profits to pay for privilege. None of that stuff. In true capitalism, you grow your business. The invisible hand of capitalism exists because you create, you innovate, and you deliver better than anybody else. And that's how you grow your business. You reinvest in your customer experience, in your product, in the benefits you bring, all of those things. So when you move to this sort of corporatist, non-competitive environment where you're creating those barriers, it's almost impossible to recover from. So the only way truly is to fall on the sword and hope that they'll recognize that you recognize what you did wrong and maybe can get back in. But this was so egregious, so egregious that it just made absolutely no sense to continue to do business with them.
Did that leave a long-term effect for them? Or not just for them. Let me rephrase that. Not just for them, but did that affect business there in general? Did that spread?
One of the two actually within about a 5-year period of time was in trouble. And within about 7 years in, left the market. They had to close.
No kidding.
Because they had been doing it in their tape. They had been doing it in the plastic strapping, which I also got involved with. Most of the way that they were dealing with their customers were to handcuff them into long-term contracts that were not mutually beneficial. So as soon as the competition came in, people recognized that they've been taken advantage of.
Wow. Now, when you guys switched over to doing it the way you did it, that was a direct result of the business that you were walking into, the way that it was being done, or was that a way that you guys were already doing it? Was it a reaction or a proactive?
It came out of some real basic research that we did up front.
Okay.
We knew that we could beat the price on the tape, and we knew that we could get better equipment at a lower price to bring into the market. The question was, what is the core strategy to make it happen? Because we could have just followed their model and undercut, said, well, we'll give you send their machine back, we'll loan you our machine, and it'll be $40. And then we'd have been playing a pricing war back and forth. So we did a qualitative study with probably 100 major users of that type of equipment to really understand how they felt and to share options and see, if we did this, how would that affect you? If we did this, how would it affect you? And built a core strategy, which today is what my company does, is really looking at that creation of a real strategy before you start grabbing your tools and going to market. Take that extra day and really dig into, who is my customer? What are the real pains, the difficulties, the challenges that they have? And how can I differentiate in a way that matters to them and not brag about the things that don't matter to them?
Yeah. And I think, and that comes up a lot. Obviously, you have to know the customer, right? Who is your customer, first of all? I mean, you got to know who your ideal customer is, not who you want them to be, but who are they? And I think something that gets overlooked, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think something that gets overlooked often is knowing your competitors. So you don't only need to know who you're trying to sell to, but who are you trying to sell against, and finding that niche of, what can we do that's different than them? Because if you're doing everything the same, it's going to be hard to gain market share, right? So I think
I want to expand on that. You hit on something that's really important. We talk about all the time. It's not who your competitors are. It's who are all of the alternatives to solve that problem. So imagine we're competing with adhesive tape to seal boxes. Okay. Who are we competing with? Well, other guys that have tape, those are my direct competitors. Guys that have glue dispensing equipment, guys that use water activated paper tape, that's you wet it and it seals the box. Staples. There are boxes that self-close where you don't need any fasteners or any connections. So all of the alternatives to solve that problem. You know what else is an alternative to sealing with tape? Shrink wrap, no box. Look at water bottles. Okay. You go to the store to buy a bunch of water bottles. They used to come in the same tray that like 4 6-packs of Coke would come in.
Right.
You know, then they started wrapping those in shrink film. Then someone figured out, well, if we're using shrink film, we don't need that little tray. It's a flat sheet of cardboard, and we shrink that. And then they said, well, wait a minute, cardboard's not cheap, and it gets wet and can get soggy if the water goes. What would happen if we just went a little thicker in the film and switched to a more rigid film? Now when you buy a pack of water bottles,
isn't that plastic?
It's just plastic. There's no tray.
Yeah.
And then you look at the plastic bottles themselves. They used to be blow molded to a certain thickness so that the bottle would be stable. And to get that cost out every year, they kept making the plastic thinner to the point that the bottles would crush. There's a company, I can't think of the name of it right now, that designed a system that microdoses nitrogen. So when the bottle goes down the line before the cap goes on, a spurt of nitrogen goes and it seals, and that keeps the bottle totally intact so that they could go even thinner on the plastic.
So that's the reason why we get these bottles that don't stand up, right?
Yeah.
Where the bottom of it's kind of crushed down.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're 100% recyclable. And if you put them in the bin, they go to a place that grinds up polyester. They grind it up. The cap goes one way. The bottle goes the other because the plastic in the cap floats and the other sinks. And it becomes plastic strapping. It becomes other things. So it's a whole life cycle. But if you ask then, who's my competition? Well, the competition changes all the time because there are alternatives that aren't what you make.
Sure. Yeah, everybody's progressing and evolving into more and more because everybody's trying to fit into that niche. Yep.
So when I was in the adhesive tape industry from the performance tape side, I was an executive with Avery Dennison for a number of years where we were developing these high performance solutions in tape. So for example, if you look at a skyrise building, all those windows are held in with tape. That's it. It's a high performance acrylic foam tape. And you say, well, who's the competitor for that tape? Who else makes that tape? Well, there's liquid adhesives. There's mechanical fasteners. There's a lot of alternatives. They're competitors. So you have to look at your value proposition, not just how other people who do what you do, but anyone else who could solve that problem. That's key to true market analysis.
I think that's great advice because that's something that you don't always think about. You think about that direct relationship. Like you said, who else makes that tape? Well, maybe nobody else makes that tape, but who else is making something that would work the same way as that tape or better?
Yeah. Yep. I'm working on a project now. It's kind of fun to talk about, but it is a product that you use for cleaning your home that leaves these probiotic or green biotic or whatever the end name is going to be in the grout and in the tile so that when your little boys miss the seat, it remains active and continues to eat so that there's never a punch in your face smell like you get it at the truck stop.
Now, is that something was in progress before COVID happened or after? Because that sounds like something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was in progress before. Now, the interesting thing about the product, again, you're looking at your alternatives. So there are enzyme cleaners out there. You see them like the stuff to get the skunk smell. But when you dig into that product, it's not really an alternative because it doesn't work. The enzymes don't live long enough typically on the shelf in most of those products to actually still be active. And if they become aerosol, if you spray them, many people are allergic to them. So you get a product to clean your bathroom and you get sick. Well, this product doesn't do that. It can work as an aerosol. It can work as a pump spray. And the enzyme doesn't last long, even if it's alive. This stuff only activates when there's food, which is RP or other waste.
Sure.
And it continues to thrive so that during the week, when your little grandkids come over and miss the bowl, even if you clean that up, it still smells. With this stuff, it doesn't.
Wow.
So it's solving a solution. We joke that, there's those products for number two. We're number one. We can knock the pee out of your problems kind of thing. We're joking around. But really it's an alternative that is going to destroy all the other products in the market once it gains acceptance. Most cleaning products have these really strong fragrances added to them for two reasons. One, most people equate that with clean, even though it's not. And two, because, and this is going to sound sexist, but in the research that we do, most female consumers buy cleaning products not based on their efficacy, but on how they make them feel when they smell it when they buy it.
Yeah, just the smell, the aroma itself after. Like if you clean the bathroom, you don't want it to. The bleach is not a wonderful smell, although it means typically that it's going to be clean, but you don't want to smell bleach or ammonia.
Yeah. And bleach won't kill the urine smell.
Yeah.
It'll take care of it until the bleach smell goes away, and then you'll smell it again.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of interesting. But if you go down the aisles of any supermarket in Brazil, for example, where they sell cleaning products, there's no hermetic seal on them, because you'll see women in Brazil will open the bottle and smell it to make sure that's the one they want to buy. Same with soaps and anything else. It's a cultural thing. Here in the US, you may not go that far, but if you bring home a product and you're not thrilled with the smell, you're never going to buy it again.
Yeah.
In that consumer space, it's so important. So what this does is it actually eliminates the source by eating it. Febreze covers it. Bleach temporarily gets rid of it, but leaves you with that awful smell. This is a product that when you spray it, it goes to work and keeps working. So it doesn't have all the problems that an enzyme product can have with people that have allergies.
That's perfect. So when you're working with a company who's trying to be proactive with the way that they're thinking about competing, I'm kind of still thinking about the whole tape scenario that you're talking about, sure. And you want to stay competitive with not only your competitors but people who are doing other things that may end up competing with you. Sure. How do you get a business owner or a corporation to think in that way? Yeah,
that probably is the biggest challenge that we have. Because usually what happens when you go into a client for consulting, they don't recognize that they really don't understand their customer the way they think they do.
Yeah.
The things that they're the most proud of in their manufacturing typically is not interesting to the buyer. I can give you a couple examples of that. And the third part of it is it's been working kind of until now. Am I going to risk doing something different that could hurt that, even though it could make me grow?
Right.
So for example, and I've used this example in other conversations, so I'll give you the short version. I did work with a company that manufactures steel drums. Best quality steel drum in the market, hands down. But all of the marketing of the company was based on, for example, we source American steel, so you could trace it back to the mill if there's a problem. We have the ability to paint in different colors. We self-test in-house. We meet ANSI standards. We have ISO. Every one of those things, with the exception of the US, are table stakes in a poker game. You can't be in that business if you don't do all those things.
Okay.
You're basically bragging, I'm a car dealer, you should do business with me because we have cars. It's that kind of a silly conversation. Well, we did a qualitative study and we spoke with the top customers who never strayed, been with the company 20 years, love their products, major chemical companies. We talked to companies that bought from them as the second source. So we'll buy 20% from you and 80% from the big multinational. And we talked to companies that stopped buying. And we wanted to see in that qualitative study, why do you do business with these guys? Well, it turns out it had nothing to do with the product. Nothing. Number one, they answer the phone. Wow. That was the most common thing and that was every single person we talked to.
We can actually talk to somebody when we need to talk to them.
When we need to talk, when I, as the buyer, need drums from you and I didn't order enough, no other company can get me on the schedule faster than you. So if we get a run on product X and I don't have that drum in stock, in a week, you guys can get it on my floor. Other guys could be months. Number 3 was whenever we have a problem, and it's not a 100% industry. There are, every once in a while, you'll get a drum that leaks. When you guys have one, you own it, you replace it, and you take care of me within days. I could be on a list for customer service for a month with your competitors. So those were the key. Then when it got down to the guys that were second source, it was, well, we would buy 100% from you, but you're only one location. And if something happens to your factory, where are we going to get drums?
Gotcha.
So we love your product, we love your service, and by buying 20%, we have you on the hook when we need an emergency, but we're buying from your competitor mostly because they have 5 or 6 factories.
Accessibility.
Yeah, and that was the value. So what did we do? We changed the message. We started talking about the convenience, talking about accessibility, that personal touch, and had relationships with a couple of other independents that if something happened to us, we had a second source. And we went in that business to almost double in less than 2 years, and the company was sold significantly higher value than what the goal was when I started working there to grow the company.
What's the best way to find that out? I mean, is this like customer survey kind of things, or what's the best way to find out where those shortcomings could be, or where you do fit in and where you don't fit in the marketplace?
Yep. I'll tell you, if one more hotel sends me a survey,
oh God, you're not kidding,
how their service was, I think my head might explode.
Yeah.
Yeah, surveying works if you have active advocates as your customers, which is always the goal of everything that we do. Mm-hmm. But it's that personal touch of, I'm calling you from this company. You're a very important customer to them, and they want your feedback so that we can provide you even better service. Can you give me 15 minutes to answer some questions?
Yeah, and give them like some open-ended questions. What can we do to make you even happier?
Yeah. Who doesn't want to share their opinion to make the world a better place?
Sure. Well, I mean, just feeling important enough that somebody's asking you is a step forward.
Yep. And those interviews are so much more powerful because at the end of the day, every project that we work on goes back to Fangled Tech, my company's core philosophy, which is we teach every client how to convert every touch into a voracious advocate for their brand. Everybody who you ever do business with should love the experience so much that they go out and tell everybody. They shout from the hills and become an advocate for it.
Copper Coast Gourmet Coffee. When fresh matters, we deliver it from the fields to the roasters and into your cup. CopperCoastGourmetCoffee.com.
If you're not doing that, if that isn't part of your core strategy as a company, you're going to get lots of customers and no follow-up customers.
Yeah. I've run into this a lot. I work in health insurance as a trade. Sure. And the health insurance industry is obviously very, regulated. There's so many things that we can't say, that we can't do. So you can't really talk about the product. And you were talking at the beginning of the conversation here about selling an intangible, right? I'm asking you to spend this money every month to protect yourselves, but it's something you can't see, you can't hear, you can't feel it, you can't smell it. Yeah, it's just there, right? Mm-hmm. So to differentiate yourself as a health insurance agent, you really have to use yourself as that differentiator because, health insurance, it does vary actually quite a bit, but in the eyes of most people, not so much, right? You have deductibles, co-insurance, co-pays, things like that. But other than that, they don't really notice a difference until something goes wrong. And luckily, that doesn't happen very often, right? And that's what you're hoping for. But when something goes wrong, you want to make sure you can talk to a person, not sit on hold on an 800 number and things like that. So if you were consulting somebody like myself, who is in insurance or one other service industry like that, where it's a kind of an intangible, where would you start the consulting at? What would you ask me first or consult with me first?
Well, I don't know that much about your industry, so sure. I would need to do some digging to understand it. But intuitively, so this is without actual data, which I always hesitate to do, but I would think from my own personal experience with insurance, I have the option to go online and search my own. I have the option to go with an agent. Right. I have the option to join a plan through an association or otherwise when it comes to my health insurance. I use a specific person who did the work for me. And the question is, doing that, did it cost me more? No. If something were to happen and I have a question about my insurance, do I call an 800 number and get some guy on a bad day, or do I call the guy I trust?
Right. The guy that you've already spoken to.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, part of the messaging that may work with the consumer is, yes, insurance is a great thing, but even better is going to sleep at night and having a great night's sleep, knowing that if anything were to happen to you or your loved ones, you know who to call.
Right.
And you know his face, you know his word, and he's there to help you long after the sale goes through.
Right. So that personal touch is
Yep.
more of the sale than the product itself.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I buy from an insurance agent who actually he's retired and he took on somebody who followed his philosophy. But all of my insurance is through someone who, when I have a question, I can shoot him an email and within no time, or I can pick up the phone and call and get the answer. And he does this thing that every salesperson needs to know. I'll call him up and I'll go, hey, what's the answer to this question? You know what he says to me? I have no idea.
Yes.
Give me an hour. I'll be back on the phone with you. I'm going to find out. That's a great question. Thank you.
I have learned that as well, that admitting when you don't know gains so much trust. Because if you try to flub your way through it, people know. I mean, they can tell. Yeah. And it's too serious of a topic, especially when you talk about insurance, of course. It is too serious of a topic to try to flub your way through.
Yeah.
And just admit when you don't know, man. I mean, we can't know everything, right?
Yeah. But it's somebody who also, the next level of it, if you want long-term advocates, is to remember to check back in and check on life cycle. For example, if you're in the car insurance business and you know I'm going to hit an age milestone where my insurance is going to change, it's the call or the note going, hey, your birthday's coming up. I got great news for you. At this age, we're probably going to be able, would you like me to look and see if there's a better policy? Or if not, this is, keeping me in the loop as to what's going on. I'm not interested in a monthly newsletter with a whole bunch of things that aren't related to me.
Right.
But that personal touch email, which can be automated and seem personal, but isn't,
right,
specific to me. You're my agent. You're not everybody else's agent.
Exactly.
Those kind of personal touch models are very inexpensive to automate and personalize, but still prove and show that you care about your client.
Yeah.
Because I get offers every day from these other insurance companies. I don't even open the envelopes. And it may be that they've got a discount for me, but that peace of mind of knowing that on a couple of occasions when I needed information, I got it. I stick with the guy.
Yeah, and it's not always about the money. I mean, we all want to save a buck where we can, but if you're losing it in a different area, whether it's the convenience, service, accessibility, like you said, the three things that you mentioned were the customer service, accountability, and accessibility with the metal drums. So I agree with that 100%. That it's the value in knowing who you're talking to. And they know, as a customer, we all know that you're not the only customer of ours, but we want to feel like we are at that time. I always add my customers in my phone by first and last name. When they call, I'm like, hey, Tom, I don't just say hello. I call them by name. That way they know, I know who it is. And I always tell them to save me in their phones as well. Save me in there.
There's in my network, there's a woman whose company is called Felt Marketing. And she's in the industrial space. She's brilliant. One of the most brilliant industrial marketing people I've got the privilege of being around. And it's all not about what you think, it's about what you feel.
Yeah.
If you felt like you were treated in a certain way, you're gonna be that loyal advocate in so many deeper levels than if you thought you were.
Well, emotion. I mean, emotion that goes everywhere. And you're gonna remember the opposite as well. If somebody rubbed you the wrong way. And all that. So, and I would think that, as part of your sales strategy, if you're, a business owner and you have a sales team, or maybe it's just it could be the factory. I mean, I guess it could be any employee, that would be a major part of building the culture that you want to build within the company is giving that personal touch.
Yeah. And this kind of leads into that whole personal and company brand conversation. If someone came to me, I don't do work in the insurance industry because of the high level of regulation, which
right.
can and can't. Yeah. I don't have the expertise on my team. I don't do legal offices either for that same purpose. I don't want to get in a situation where we're creating a campaign that could jeopardize those rules. Mm-hmm. But we do have folks in our group that we recommend that are in the personal branding space, which you got to watch out for. The day COVID hit, everybody became a brand counselor. I can help you with your personal brand. And it's kind of like, no, you're unemployed, but right. I'm glad you think that's a niche for you. We have folks that are really good at it. But the other side of it is, and I've heard this said in 100 different ways, but your brand as a person or a business's brand is based on the moment that person encountered the employee who's having the worst day. So there's people, it's what are they saying about you when you're not in the room? That's your brand. There's a whole bunch of these sort of cliches. But, when it's you who is the center of your business, you're as an insurance agent, as a lawyer, as a whatever, that moment that someone contacts you, And what they experience from you at that moment is their perception of your brand.
Exactly.
And they remember it based on the worst moment in the entire experience with you, unless you know how to recover it.
Exactly. So when somebody contacts you for, let's say, sales coaching, I can relate to sales coaching a little bit more just because I'm in sales. So we'll kind of go there. If a potential customer calls you up and they're like, hey, we need some help in this area. Can you walk me through just like a step-by-step process, generalized, of course, of how you would start that? What's the process look like? Yeah,
we tend to do, first of all, we want to look at the data. What's the performance? What's been happening in the company prior?
Okay.
What's the trajectory of the salespeople? We do individual interviews. We use a testing protocol that norms the who that person is based on what are their motivators, the attributes of them as a salesperson, who they are, and they're normal and adaptive. In other words, how are they in their personal life as opposed to how they adapt in the workplace, and norm that against highly successful salespeople. There's a matrix that we use that's brilliant, and it's not about weeding people out. It's about understanding. It's sort of, you see Myers-Briggs and those kinds of things. This is far more in depth. So in looking at it, we can see sometimes, this is a person who really doesn't belong in sales, and we hope that we can find them better things within the organization or help them get into something else. But that's the rarity. I think in my career, I've come across one that just, I don't know what he was doing in sales. That's just not something that he's ever going to do.
Trying to force your personality to be something that you're not truly into.
And that guy had all sorts of anxiety issues to the point that he had an ulcer because he just didn't.
Sales is not the right thing to be in.
We did the right thing by helping him get into the marketing team where his creative juice was beautiful, and he did great things.
Oh, perfect.
So, but like, for example, in one of the teams that I was coaching, we discovered some interesting things. We had a guy on the team who wasn't performing very well. They were always talking to him about, man, if you close this deal, that you could get 20 grand in commission just on that one deal. But when we really looked at what were his motivators weren't the money, it was what money could buy. And if you just simply talk to him about that's BMW money or that's Rolex money, all of a sudden he got motivated because there's attributes that people have. There was another fellow on the team, better than average salesman. He wasn't a low performer, but we discovered his entire ego was based on people looking up to him, and nobody ever did.
Yeah.
But we started talking to him about being the sales leader, about being number one. If you close that, you're going to be ahead of everybody else. You're going to be ahead of your goals. Everyone's going to look up to you. And when we looked at it from that ego point of view, he performed like you wouldn't believe.
It's all about knowing your people and what motivates each individual, not necessarily the team as a whole.
Right. So that was part of it. That's usually part of it, is that understanding. But then we take it to a different level. Okay. What is the actual sales process? Do you understand the different stages that a buyer goes through specific to your product? I hate the sales funnel model when the sales funnel model is locked into these very specific categories, because some businesses, the time and the change, and there are businesses that skip a step based on other businesses.
Sure.
So do they understand it from a suspect to a lead to an account to a proposal in that process are they speaking the same language so that when we're talking about deals, we're not talking about war stories, we're talking about the actual influence. Okay. And I'm a big proponent of CRMs that were actually designed for salespeople, not for the finance and IT team. So that salespeople don't see it as a second job, that now they're clerks. It should be something that they love because it's so easy to use.
It should be an extension of them.
And so relevant.
Yeah.
But in that, then you can start to coach you'll find sales guys that just love to prospect all the time. They never close anything. You also see guys that they're always trying to close, and the day they close, they got no more prospects.
Right.
So how do you coach to that balance so that the funnel actually works based on what the goals of the company are? And you start to get off into the weeds in how we talk about that. But in our process, we also don't look at a sales funnel. We look at a sales hourglass, because at the bottom, once you've gained that customer, if marketing isn't still involved at every stage, you lose the ability to convert those people into voracious advocates for the brand.
Gotcha. And you certainly don't want to forget about them once they've gotten there. As you said before, it's about the follow-up. It's not about just, hey, I won that race, I got you out as a customer, and then the race is over. I think that's honestly, that should be where the race starts. right?
Imagine if you had a system so darn good that people who didn't buy from you became advocates for your brand.
You know what? I have talked about that. Sometimes the people that I can't help have been some of my the basis of the most referrals for me. Because again, it's going back to the honesty. Hey, look, I'm not the best guy for you. I can't help with the products that I have. The products I have aren't the best for your situation, but I do know somebody who can help you. I trust them. I've been working with them for years. You give them over to them, and then you still follow up even after you've passed them off to that referral that you gave them to. Those people will, like, hey, Craig he's great. He couldn't help me, but he sent me to the right person. And you're right. Sometimes the people you can't help can be great advocates for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other is the sales funnel has leaks. There's 100 and then it goes down to 50, it goes down to 20. But what are you doing with the no's that leave the funnel? Are they an indicator that maybe you need to develop a new product? Are they an indicator that there's a benefit that you're not talking to? They left the funnel because they did business with your competitor, because they didn't know that you did better than them? Is your messaging causing it to happen? So a proper sales funnel with a proper CRM where you're capturing that information should be feeding the intelligence of the marketing team and the operations and the product development team to know if they're on track. And it should be in real time.
Sure.
So if we had 100 people in the funnel and 50 of them bought from the competitor before we got them to the next level in the funnel, what does that no teach us? Well, the competitor had a feature that they bragged about as if we didn't have it. And they got the customer, so they closed them before the customer realized ours was better. Or there's a feature the competitor has we could add with no effort. And if that feature is what was causing us to lose all that business. So part of that sales coaching is, how do we learn from no? Don't get angry with no, learn from it.
Right.
And energize yourself from the no's, because it will make you better and it'll make the company better.
And keep track.
Because
if you don't, if you're not keeping track, it's going to go away, right? And so you need to mark down some, and CRMs are great for that, or should be. That's how they should be designed, so you can keep track of those, and then you can see a trend.
Yep. But if you develop the CRM to keep track of that, creating a new job for your salespeople and taking away their ability to be selling,
right,
then your CRM sucks.
Exactly.
It's how do you do it in a way, and that's something that we implement. But how do you do it in a way that energizes the sales guys? Because it's very easy to click and document, and the marketing team is able to gather that data without interfering with the salespeople out doing their job. Yeah. And when they see the results, what's in it for me? Man, we captured all that data, and now we got that product. 2 years ago, we'd have been talking about that in meetings, and no one in marketing would have been in the sales meeting, and they would have not known. They knew it, and they came up with the product. Well, it would have taken us 2 years before. Now we got it in 3 months.
How often should you be looking at those results? It's something you should be looking at every day, every week, once a month, every quarter.
I wish there was a standard answer. It depends on the marketing team, and it depends on the business,
on the industry as well.
What is the sales cycle? What is the development cycle of it? Many times, if you're able to speed up that development process within an organization, because you're looking at that data every day, so that you can get 3 paces in front of your competitors and alternatives, that's a great thing. In other industries, it doesn't matter. Imagine you're a lower tier selling in the automotive industry. You're today quoting business that isn't going to happen for 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
So all of that matters in terms of how often you're coming up with stuff.
And I'm assuming that you would also want to know as much as possible, numbers wise, the same way as your competitors, because you want to know what you're up against. And, if you have somebody who's doing something really well, whether the company that you're competing against is doing really well, I don't think matters as much as, are they doing something better than you? Is their product better, or is their service better? Are they better at speaking with people, following up with people? Keeping up with their numbers, I think, can also help just as much as keeping up with your own, if you have access to them, of course. Yeah.
And the other part of the coaching, you're talking about numbers, is teaching salespeople that numbers matter. So don't come to me and tell me I got a huge deal coming. I don't know if your huge is the same as mine. I don't know if your big is the same as my big. So how big is the deal? It's huge. Put a number to it.
Compared to what?
Yeah. And the other to talk to the sales guys about that, I call it sales guy math. If we come out with this product, I know that this is $1 billion market. If we could just capture 1% of it, we're all going to be rich. Well, do you have a plan to capture 1% of it? Where did 1% come from?
Right.
The market scale is there, but saying that if you could doesn't mean that you can.
Right.
What is it that we can do to get that 1%? What's the plan to go forward to get it? The mathematical data is like this. Are you aware that 50% of the people are below average intelligence? Think about it.
Right.
Just simple math. Of course they are.
Right. They are, they're not.
It sounds insulting, but the reality is 50% of us are below, 50% of us are above.
Sure. And I've learned too, in the years in sales, is that a deal's not a deal until it's already done.
Mm-hmm.
And what you got coming up, I've been working on this guy and he's going to come around next week. He's going to call me back. Then you got nothing. You really don't. I mean, I'm not saying don't be hopeful. I mean, we all need to be hopeful and do everything it takes to get there. But it's just the process. Whether you get them in 5 minutes or it takes them 5 months to get them, it's still just a process, and the process isn't a full process until the deal's been signed. So we run into that a lot as well. It's like, oh, it's good as gold. I just need to get this from them. Well, until you have that, you don't have anything, right?
What was it, Tony Soprano in that show? You're only as good as your last envelope. And it's kind of true.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want your sales guys to recognize it, because any sales guy who tells you I close every deal, you don't want on your team, because it's first of all, he's full of it, but there's leeway. We're going to get lots of deals and hit our goals and we're going to learn from the ones that we don't. As long as we're making and exceeding our quotas and growing the business and treating people, they become advocates for the brand. That's the goal of the sales team. And
I like that you keep saying that, the advocates for the brand. Yeah, I think that's a powerful statement. That your customers. I love that, actually. I think I'm going to steal that from you, because your customers really should be. They should be your best advertising. Your best marketing should come from the customers who you've already helped, and help to the extent that they want to talk to you or talk about you to others. And they really should do all the advertising that you need.
Yep.
I like that way of thinking.
Every employee in your building, every subcontractor, whether you got a guy in painting the walls during business hours, the guy cutting your grass, the guy who plows your parking lot, all of those people are part of your customer service team. And all of them have to come in. I've had situations working in companies where I've interviewed vendors to do service and let them know what our code of conduct is for vendors, so that when we have visitors in the building and dealing with our employees, that they recognize how they have to behave, because every one of them could affect an advocate for the brand.
Yeah, they're all representatives of where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that way of thinking a lot, because that if you keep that in your mind when you're working with people and around people, I think it would change the way that you work.
Yep. See, I get myself in trouble because I kind of poo-poo mission statements. Mission statements serve two purposes. One, they look good on the wall to impress people, when they walk in the building. And two, sometimes they can direct people's thought. If you work the mission statement in your annual strategic meeting to get people's mindset. But what companies should live is their brand story. And that brand story is what we've been talking about, and every employee in the building can tell you the brand story if you're doing your job right. You're not going to find guys on the line who know the mission statement.
That's true.
Yeah. But if your brand story is solid and focused on truly creating advocates for that brand based on who you are as a company, defines who you are, your ethics, your morals, what is it, a benefit that you bring to the market, however that goes, that living brand statement is so much more powerful than a mission statement.
I agree. And, because sometimes the mission statement becomes a slogan, and it shouldn't, right? I mean, it should be a mission statement. It should be the culture of the company. And I've been in charge of writing mission statements before, not necessarily for the entire company, but for an office. And because every office has its own culture as well. You want to, take the company culture, but sometimes you have an office culture. And writing a mission statement, I personally don't think it should be easy. I think it should be tough, because you really have to encompass one personality. What do you want the personality of that office to be? And then going back to, sales, is it going to hurt or help how we do business? Is it going to hurt or help how we, speak with our customers and go forward that way as well? So I think they're important, but but there are other things that could probably do more.
Yep. Well, like I had said, the mission statement is a great beginning of focus if you're going to do a strategic operations
Yeah.
meetings with your team to really get you on focus to what is the mission of the company. Typically, it doesn't go beyond that. Typically, once you've built that branding statement of who you are, the mission statement goes up on the wall and you take it back down again to refocus for the next time you're going to talk strategy. But the living brand is it's part of who you are as a company.
Which do you think is more permanent?
The brand of the company tends to be more of a, I wouldn't say that it changes, but it gets
More
enhanced.
fluid?
It can be, but the core of it doesn't. Mission statements, I've seen them completely change year to year in companies because in the statement, we're going to really focus on doing this, and that, and the market changed, then it doesn't. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Again, everything is, I hate cookie cutter answers. The guys that drive me nuts, today I'm going to give you the 5 keys to success, and just there's 5. And if I only get 3 of those keys, am I going to fail? Is it? And then I read the keys and I'm like, well, those aren't my keys.
Right.
Then I can unlock this one. It's more, how do you take the situation, disassemble it in a way that you can really understand it, build a strategy around it, and put it back together in a way that works.
And still stay, because I think it should be reevaluated pretty often because business changes. It should. It better. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't change your business to adapt to, everything that's going on around you and, different situations, and it doesn't have to be something as serious as COVID, to make changes to your business. But, technology changes, the needs and wants and expectations of your customers change, and you need to adapt to it. So I think those mission statements, although should be focused more on a general feeling of the company, but whether it's a mission statement or otherwise, I think they should stay somewhat fluid to be able to mold to what's going on around you in business.
Yeah, and I do think there's a hazard to leaving it too open to constantly change. I think that it should be either an event that happens would cause an immediate rethinking or on a more of a scheduled basis, because once you've built a strategic plan and you're starting to implement it, making adjustments to that plan makes sense, but changing the core of the actual strategy, you never know if what you're doing is working because you haven't taken it to fruition. You've got this great pitch and you go out and you talk to 5 people and nobody buys. You go, okay, well, we got to abandon it. Well, what if those 5 people you talked to were the wrong people? What if they're not really a representative of the total market that you're trying to sell to?
If you're changing that main idea too often, then you don't really have any way to gauge what you're doing either because you're moving the goal so much.
Yeah. I'll give you a silly example. I was working with a group of people, and I really don't care if they know I'm talking about them. I'm not going to give you their name. But it was in the chemical industry for cleaning chemicals years ago. And they had a product out there that they'd never really had a complaint, but a word came back that one of the employees in one of the places that was using this product thought it smelled a little bit swampy. That was what came back. They stopped everything. People around a table with a kit of fragrances, sniffing which fragrance should we? And I was like,
over the opinion of
one data point. That wasn't even a complaint. It was just that it smelled swampy. And now we have 6 people around a table sniffing fragrances to choose as if they represent the customer. You're not your customer. You're any company that bases their business on what you as the owner think the customer is, that you're the customer, is crazy, because the customer is not you. You market to the people who want to buy, not to the people in your building. So every single one of those buzzes that goes off in the alarms in my head was going, this is insane. You don't know that there's really a problem. You're addressing the problem by creating a new one, by choosing a fragrance that you like without any question whatsoever of people using your product, what they might like. And you've got 6 people around the table that have jobs to do. And now shipments are going to go out late. Bookkeeping isn't going to be bookkeeped. It's that kind of immediate, shiny object chasing that can destroy a business.
Yeah, and not getting it straight from the source of who you're making it for to begin with.
Yeah. It's to me a total irrational lack of leadership, lack of management.
Wow. Andrew, I just looked at the clock, man. That's our time. Man, it goes quick. Do me a favor. What's that?
You mean I got to go do some actual work now?
You can, yeah. Now I got to send you back to work, man. If you wouldn't mind, tell the listeners where they can contact you, how they can get a hold of you, ask you more questions, maybe even pick up some more tips from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is fangledtech.com. You can check us out there. I'm on LinkedIn. Look me up. I'm always willing to network with anybody who's not trying to sell me Bitcoins and MLM marketing or other scams. But if it's something that could be a mutually beneficial relationship, help with your business or things that could help me, look for me on LinkedIn. And also we have a new company called the Virtual Presenter Course, virtualpresentercourse.com, where you can add all sorts of great things to your ability to promote. If you notice my background, if you're watching the visual, it can make people applaud what you do, earn you lots of money, and really be able to be far more impactful while you're presenting in Zoom or any other kind of video conferencing. So
the people who are watching on the YouTube channel are getting a little bit more entertainment right now than the folks that are just listening. So for those who are just listening on the podcast apps, make sure you turn into the YouTube channel to catch the full effect of that one. So Andrew, thank you so much, man.
Hold on one sec. The folks who are listening, they're going to have to watch the video to see what happened when I mooned the audience.
He just mooned us. Unbelievable.
They gotta watch the video now to see what that means.
We're doing the shock jock thing now. Andrew, thank you so much, man. It's always a good time, and I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I had a blast, man.
Thank you for joining us this week. Go to our website at thebizreveal.com to catch all of our past episodes. We're available on all podcast apps, or you can watch any of our episodes on the Biz Reveal YouTube channel. I'm Craig Sawyer, and this is the Biz Reveal. Till next time.